those who don't, a couple of lines about me. I am passionate about teaching, have been teaching for the last 28 years across postgraduate and undergraduate departments. Currently, I'm working, as the title slide suggests, as an associate professor in communication and soft skills with KBS. My core areas are literature, communication, and soft skills. And I have been writing and publishing extensively in these areas. So my 7 books, 2 of which are co-authored, have been largely in the area of communication and soft skills. So having said that, we will go on to today's topic for discussion, which is writing to impress, maximizing the impact of online communication. My simple request to everybody is keep your phones on mute at all, or whatever devices you're using on mute at all times, because otherwise there are echoes which get heard and it disturbs everybody. However, you are most welcome to keep your video on because it feels good to see faces. And finally, I would be taking questions because I like interaction, and without interaction, I think the learning is never complete. So, however, given the limitations of the medium, we will restrict our interaction to the end, where you could ask me any questions that you have. However, sometimes we have this urge when we have the question, it starts nagging us. So if you're feeling like that at any point, you can just type out your question and put it in the chat box. Minoti Naik, my former student, colleague for many years, is monitoring the session, and as a moderator, she would be looking at the questions and putting them forward to me at the end. However, you're most welcome to ask your own questions at the end as well. So having said that, let me first begin by why I have taken this as the final topic for the series of webinars I've conducted for KBS, right? The reason I took this topic was I was from students, friends, colleagues, and from the industry. I had been collecting feedback on what is it that they would like to know, and I had some of my own ideas. And one of the consistent theme that people spoke to me about was writing to impress, because it is a very, very important skill. And I have, in the 28 years of my professional life, I have come across many examples of what people have written, which are at times so off-throwing, so upsetting, or so totally challenging that very unfortunately you have to call the person back and ask, I'm sorry, but what do you mean by what you have written? And I think that is at its most pathetic, but all of us can write better than what we usually do. It's a skill to which we don't pay too much attention, and that is why we are going to discuss about this skill today, writing to impress. Now, in the current situation, writing has become all the more important, okay? The lockdown has been here for 3 months plus. We are in the stage of unlock 1, but as everybody is predicting and openly saying, it is always for quite some time till a vaccine is developed, it is going to be 2 steps forwards, 1 step behind. Right, so we have been restricted to the online medium, and this is going to be a reality for a long, long time to come. So having said this, writing is becoming more important. Why? Because all the client-face meetings, all the one-on-one conversations that we used to have over a cup of tea in offices, all those canteen visits, are all taken online now. And every time it is not possible to keep calling people, because when you see them, it's a different matter. When you don't know their convenience. Everybody is overworked with work from home, plus their chores, home chores, because there are no helps available. So in this context, writing is becoming increasingly important. Writing is fast replacing oral communication as one of the chief forms of communication. And of course, as a consequence, if we don't really write effectively, we are going to create problems for ourselves. However, we need to really understand that with writing, if we are not careful, we are likely to conduct or commit more challenges for ourselves and for others as against oral communication. And let me give you a very simple example of why and how. Okay, so for example, let us presume that somebody from among this group is on a client-facing meeting and there are a few words exchanged. So the client has said something, you have said something, and there has been a deliberation, maybe even a heated discussion. At a later point, it is ultimately your words against the client's. It is ultimately words which have been there in the air and have remained in the air. But when you have put something down in writing, it is a black on white, okay, or multiple colors on white if you're using different colorings, but it is there to stay. And because it is there to stay, you are creating many challenges for yourselves if you are not very careful with it. The second and equally prominent challenge that comes with writing is that we are not habituated to it, right? When we see somebody, meet somebody face to face, there might be an initial hesitation, but after that we hit it and we can get down to talking up to people and with people. But with writing, many a times we tend to write one line, delete it, write another one, delete it, write a third, delete it, and we realize that we are spending more time deleting than we are actually writing. And this is something, again, we need to address because the work is not getting any lesser. And if we are going to take time to write impressive communication, then maybe it is a time worth spent, but maybe it is also a time which has set you back considerably. So having said the context, what are the major challenges of written communication? That it is important, we have said why it is occupying center stage. And yet we cannot leave out the fact that it is more challenging than oral communication. The first and foremost reason, as I said, is it is more complex. The syntax is more complex. The syntax meaning the sentence structure is more complex. The choice of words is more complex. There are multiple layers involved like spelling and grammar and punctuation, which may get overlooked when you are speaking, but not necessarily when you write. And we are going to talk about that as we go along. So in its very nature, let us understand and accept the fact that writing is a very complex phenomenon, much more complex than oral communication. And in addition to being complex, it has four other challenges which are equally, if not larger, equally large, if not larger. And what are they? The first challenge is that it leaves a longer impression. As I said, when you write something, it is there, black on white, it is there. A person can go back to it. A person can reread it. A person can think about it, reflect on it, and do so many things with it. So therefore, it is always available for you. The second thing is that it serves as a proof. Now, what do we mean by this? If tomorrow there is a fallout between you and the person to whom you have written, then that person can come up with that as a legal document. So tomorrow you commit something to the client verbally, it can still get diffused because it is one person's word against the other person's word. But one loose word here and there, including maybe something casually said like, you look lovely. Okay, it might be said in writing, and if it is seen in writing, it can be taken up by somebody as a case of sexual harassment, and quite likely it would go in that person's favor. So it might be seemingly innocuous statements, and that is what I want you to understand. But it has a legal implication. It serves as proof. You cannot deny tomorrow that you have written it, although many a times we can deny what we have said. The third is it can be more offensive. It can be more offensive because when you see people, when you are interacting with them, you have multiple other ways of clarifying things. When something is written, that it is just that word and your perception of that word. So therefore, many a times, any slip ups, any loose word, any word which has a meaning which you don't realize, or which has a meaning that you don't anticipate, can still go against you because it can offend the person. Okay, so for example, if you just turn around and use an S word or an F word when you're speaking, somebody might just say, what a loose talker. But if you use that in writing, the person is going to say the person lacks courtesy and is obviously abusing me. So that becomes a proof of abuse. So we have to be careful to understand that it is more offensive. And the fourth and final point is that it has no alternative or immediate feedback. Usually in face-to-face communication, you can see people. You can figure out their reactions. So even in online communication, I can see some people as I'm talking to you. And when I see people, I can see their facial reactions, I can see their body language, and I can make out whether I'm saying something which may not be acceptable. So in face-to-face communication, you have an immediate feedback mechanism, and that feedback mechanism is completely lacking in written communication. So you might write a message once, you might write a message 2 times, you might write a message 4 times, and you may still have no clue whether the person has read it, what the person's reaction to it, till and until the person gets back to you with the actual feedback that the person has. Having said that, we need to understand that there are types of written communication. And I'm not talking about this in the general terms of communication. I'm talking about it specifically in the context of online communication. So online written communication can be one-on-one. So I might send a message to one of you. I might send an email to one of you. I might send a message to one of you on some other platform, or a simple short messaging service, an SMS. So this is individual written communication. So it is between me and a student, me and a colleague, me and a friend, me and somebody senior, but it is one-on-one. I have some idea who that person is. I have some established connect, and therefore I am more at ease while composing that communication. The second kind of written communication, and so therefore individual written communication, although complex, is still simpler. For example, I know that I may use 4-letter words, or some of us may use them among friends, but at the same time, if you're writing a message to Dr. Preeti Shirodkar and you know what's good for you, you wouldn't let those slip out of your fingers when you're typing out a message. So that would give you an idea that individual communication, written communication, has its challenges, but yet they are simpler. If one friend is writing to another, that person may use all the colors of the rainbow as they would while speaking to the other person. As against this, group communication becomes one level more difficult. In your offices, you are going to have individual communication, maybe with your line manager, maybe with your boss, maybe with your subordinate, maybe with a colleague. That might be one-on-one. You also might have to engage in group communication where you're a part of a team, where you're talking or negotiating with multiple people, when you are part of a group. So you might engage in group communication. And that is slightly one step more difficult because obviously there are more variables. So there is more status differentiation, there is more differentiation of approach, there is more differentiation of what is acceptable, and so on and so forth. The variables keep increasing. And then talking finally about mass written communication. Here we are essentially talking not about the television and the radio as we do, but we are talking about media like your Instagram, media like your Facebook, media like your Twitter, which again you might use for personal communication or for professional communication. And while you're using it, what you are writing becomes so delicate that you might, one comma here, one full stop there, you might create a huge problem for yourself. So having said that, we need to understand that there are going to be variations among each of these groups. But we are going to try and see from our side, how can we best ensure that we don't create any chaos in trying to communicate in writing. So what we are going to try and do in the next half an hour or so is I'm going to talk about these 6 variables, and I'm going to try and see one at a time how each of these variables contribute to effective writing. So we are going to talk about all the 6 variables that you can see in front of you, one at a time, slide by slide, and then we will try and see why each of them you need to be watchful of, and how using each of them consciously, you can make your writing tad more effective. So let us first look, therefore, at the reader. Now, in the reader, the first thing you need to know are there are going to be 2 kinds of readers of whatever online communication you do. Your known readers and your unknown readers. People whom you know, people who are your colleagues, friends, families, relatives, acquaintances, friends of your friends, or whatever. These are people who know you, whom you know when you are sending out a message, you know, even if you don't know all the details of the person, at least you know whom you are writing to. At least you know something about that person. So for example, tomorrow, if you are writing to a colleague from some other department in your office, that person might still be more of a known entity than a person from a totally different office whom you have never heard of before, or a client whom you have never heard of before, whom you're trying to woo. And today we are trying to pitch regularly using the online medium. And when we pitch regularly using the online medium, we need to understand that we are communicating as much with unknown people as we are communicating with known people. And if you know your reader, if you distinguish and try to spend a moment to understand whether your reader is known or unknown, then you can start using and applying the other filters which we will go into. The other thing is, with time, when you know your reader, try to understand from that person's written or verbal communication, whether that person or even the people who know you, try to understand whether they are skimmers or they are absorbers. Right? Now, there are people who can skim and absorb. Like I tell my students when I pick up an answer book, my eyes are so trained that I can first spot the mistakes that are made in it. But those are rare instances. Most of us fall into one of the 2 categories. Some of us just skim to it through what we read. So we try to grasp the main ideas. We don't go with a fine tooth comb, word by word, and try to read it. So if there is a skimmer and you give that person a whole page to read, there itself you have lost the person. If you don't manage your content in a way that when the person is skimming, the person will still understand what are your major points. You have lost the person. So you need to be able to gauge whether you are trying to reach the skimmer or you're trying to read the absorber. The absorber is somebody like like Minoti. She will go through a fine-tooth comb with every letter, every syllable, every word. So once you've sent her something, you can be sure it is thoroughly perused. However, you need to remember that as people go in rank, very often they move from absorbers to skimmers, not for anything else, but for sheer efficiency and want of time. And there is nothing wrong with being a skimmer, provided you know how to skim, and equally importantly, the person who's writing knows how to write. So when you are writing, please try to gauge whether you are writing for a skimmer or an absorber. If you see my own books, all the books that I have written in communication are written for skimmers. People who can just look and browse through it and still understand what I'm talking about. Whereas my literature-based books are written for absorbers, because that is how literature functions. So essentially, my point I'm trying to make here is understand whom you're writing for. And once you know who is going to read your work, then you can plug your language, you can plug your style, you can plug your content to suit the reader. Let us move to the next point. The second point is appreciate the medium. Every medium, Twitter has a character length. It has been revised, but still there is a character length. Facebook doesn't have a character length, but people don't read pages on Facebook. Right? So you need to understand what are the specifications of every medium. How can you write an effective email? Is it really important to use or write everything in the body, or can we put some things in the attachment which are important but not mandated? This is something we need to understand when we are looking at the medium. So know the medium, study the medium thoroughly, know what it is expecting from you before you start using it. Because if you don't know the medium and you try to use it, then you are bound to fail. The second is choose it wisely. Many a times I receive WhatsApp messages on content which should have been emailed. Sometimes I receive emails on messages which are urgent, and people are not constantly looking at the mail. So they are not sure that you have sent the mail. So possibly you might have to send that content by way of WhatsApp if it's urgent. You can't, there was a time when I remember somebody sending me something. They wanted me a small, a 2-line write-up that they needed urgently, proofread by email. And then after half an hour, when I hadn't replied, the person said, "Oh my God, Preeti, I was expecting your reply." So I said, "I haven't seen the mail because I've been doing something else, and I check my mail when I'm in office 4 times a day. So I haven't, the last time I've checked it was much before you sent it." So then the person sent it to me on WhatsApp again, and within half a minute, the person had got it done. So you need to understand which medium you need to use for what purpose, when, and to communicate what, right? And finally, you need to exploit the nuances. It is ridiculous, and I've given this example when I was talking about your digital footprints as well, but people use the hashtag #MeToo for talking about anything that they want to do. It is offensive to women. Me Too is a movement of gender trying to claim its own space and its own freedom. You cannot hashtag Me Too for random things like saying, "I am also agreeable to this." People don't realize this. There are hashtags, or I have seen people who have used 25 hashtags. Now, when you use 25 hashtags, where on earth is the message that you want to put? If every word is a hashtag, if you are writing, which is so important, then it doesn't help. I knew of a professor, again, I won't name the person, who once had told us in class that as I'm speaking, I will tell you what to underline in your text. And he was teaching us literature. And you underline it. And at the end, at that time, I was doing my undergraduate program. And at the end of the class, like a very sincere student, I'd underlined. And at one point, when I looked down at my book at the end of the class, I realized that except for and, but, and full stop, I had underlined whole 10, 20 pages that he had taught me in that class. So we need to understand, people use all caps, people highlight, people do so many things that are in the face. And then when people ignore them, when people brush aside their mails because they are all caps, or they have words like, do it now. And it's shouting at that other person, that now. And then they say that when the other person says, I didn't do it because I don't think you have any business to tell me what to do, then they feel that that person is being unfair or unjust. So my point to you is, know the nuances of the medium, exploit them. Know, yes, use hashtags, they're important, but know where to use hashtags. Use other facilities that are available, but know where to use it. Use emoticons, tag your friends, but know where to do it. So in any written space, you should know the pluses of the medium. You need to use it wisely, and you need to exploit its nuances in order to make it really effective. The third thing that you really need to be aware about is the context. The context simply means, why am I writing? What is my purpose? What is my objective? Am I getting somebody to understand a problem? If yes, then I need to give the person all the details. By just giving some skimpy details and saying, I hope you've understood, is not going to get the person to understand. Similarly, if all you need the person to do is file a paper, you can't send that person a trail of emails which have gone before. You need to make the effort to delete that and say, file these papers. I have seen emails where there are 25 emails embedded in one another. Now, how on earth can anybody figure out which of these 25 has come later, which has come earlier, which has been read, which has not been read? So you're wasting the other person's time. So when you are trying to write something, you can say something in one word, don't waste a sentence. If there is a fire, you can't say, oh, please understand, there is a fire in the building, run and do it quickly, otherwise it will burn down. Because by then everybody will be charred. But at the same time, if you need, so you have to just say run and say it quickly. Or if you need somebody to stop what they are doing, you need to type out just stop. I have been telling you since a long time that you need to stop. By then that person would have typed out 4 more messages. So you need to understand the length of your content is determined by the context in which you are writing to a person. And so is the choice of medium. If the context is urgent, rely on a medium which that person is more likely to access. If you can see after dropping somebody a WhatsApp message that the last time the person has seen the WhatsApp is 6 days ago, please pick up the phone and call and tell the person, listen, there is an important email I want you to see. Don't expect that the person is going to see it. So my point is, when you are writing, be aware of the medium you're using. choose a medium which is going to help you reach that person in the most effective and the fastest way that is required, right? If there is a legal complication, you might want to send a registered letter. Just relying on an email may not make your case as strong as you have sent that person a registered letter. So you really need to know when to use which written medium. Then the next point that I would like to talk about is that you need to value your content. And in order to value your content, the first is verify your facts. I get hundreds of messages every day where I have to tell people, please don't forward incorrect messages. What happens is people receive some information, they don't bother to verify forward, and it goes around. I keep giving this example in my class, but there has actually been a lost boy who was found 24 months and constantly taken back to his parents because that message was doing the rounds of WhatsApp long after the boy had been found actually. So we need to verify whether the information we have that we are typing out. People use Wikipedia. Wikipedia has two kinds of articles. One are called referenced articles, which are authentic because they have references. And second are points of view. Points of view are unreliable until and unless they're points of view of somebody solid. Otherwise, referenced articles are reliable. So again, when you take facts, figures, data, please check, verify, because once you've put it in writing, you're giving it as a proof in the hand of the other person. And if you haven't verified your facts, then that fact is going to bite you in your back, right? The second is your choice of words. When you need to say immediate, use immediate. When you need to say urgent, you use urgent. When you just want somebody to look at something, don't cry wolf and write urgent every time because nobody will believe you when it's actually urgent. So just say, could you look at it? If you want the person to look at it in the next week, you could say, could you look at it anytime within a week? So be very clear in the words you are choosing. You cannot say, it might work and expect that person to believe that it will work. If you want that person to believe, then that person is going to ask you, are you sure? Then you will say, of course, I've written it might work. So I have done my work, but if you have done your work, then and you're sure it's going to work, then say it will work. So my point is, when you're using words, choose them carefully. Choose them carefully also in the context of the jargon. A lot of people do sales pitches online. I get messages on messages on messages about investment. Now, if you are pitching to a lay person, an anadi like me, an illiterate person, anguta chap, where investment is concerned, you are going to use all fancy terms. It's going to go bouncer over my head. Right? Today, I believe and I am investing through a firm because they bring it to the level that a person of my understanding of finance understands. So if you're pitching to a client, okay, if you are pitching to somebody from the banking sector, then of course, use all the finance terms that are at your disposal. But if you are using it to pitch it to an ordinary person and tell the person, we are expecting a fall in the repo rates, so this will be a safe instrument of investment, you have lost that person entirely. You may as well not have pitched. So this is something you need to remember. The third is organization and flow. The first paragraph, please remember, is always an overview. It has to state the purpose of what you are writing. and has to do so in no uncertain terms. It has to be very, very clear. It also has to tell you in no uncertain terms what are the primary areas that are going to be covered in what you are writing. So this organization becomes very, very important. At the end, there has to be an actionable. At the end of what you are closing, especially in an email, especially in a WhatsApp message, especially when you're expecting the other person to act on it, kindly state the actionable. In the sense, kindly revert, kindly follow up, kindly whatever. So please put that actionable very, very clearly at the end of what you're saying. We have spoken some time ago about the skimmers, and these skimmers, even if they lose everything else, they will look at the beginning carefully, they will look at the ending carefully, and if in one of this they realize there is something important that they have missed out in the middle, they will go back to it. So it is for you, the writer, to ensure that what you want read is read by the reader. And have a flow. Have a flow. That flow can be a seamless linking, where one idea is linked to another, like in a jigsaw puzzle or like a chain, right? However, it can also be linked in bullet points. Know when to use which. Know when to use bullet points. Know when to, what to put first, what to put later. Always begin either in chronological order, in which case state it in the introductory paragraph. I will tell you the series of events that have led to this. That at the beginning will give the person a clear indication that pehle ye hua, fir ye hua, fir ye hua, fir ye hua. Otherwise, the other kind of flow can be, as I said, an interlinked flow. Or it can be in the descending order. The consequence of this, I'm trying to draw your attention to the consequence of this at the outset. When I've said that, you know that this is the end point that I'm beginning at. So kindly understand how you are putting your thoughts together. And finally, look at the connectivity. Connect the ideas. They cannot be random pieces of information thrown together, because the person's brain will process it as random pieces of information. If you want that person to look at it as a whole, as a complete picture, then give that person that complete picture. Even in a jigsaw, if there is a piece missing, nobody can perfectly imagine what exactly is there in that jigsaw puzzle that is missing. That person might be able to gauge, but it will never be the same. So please understand this and ensure that there is a connectivity in what you write, so that the person finds it easy to get the whole picture. The next idea that I would like to talk about is follow the format. For those of you who have been my students, those of you who are my students, you know that I am a stickler for format, and you know that it helps, right? So know the value. In a letter, know where the from is, know where the to is, know where the reason is, because that is where people will look for it. And that is where people should look for it. Don't mark in CC the person you want to act on your mail, because that person has to be in two. If somebody has just to be informed, don't put that person in two, put that person in CC. So know the value of the format. Know that in a Facebook message, it is a visual which will create the impact. So if you have seen, usually what I put on Facebook, even if I'm talking about my webinar, I put the visual and just say to register, click here. Because that is the way people catch Facebook messages. They don't look at words, they look at images. So understand that. We all need to understand that when we are writing, we need to follow the format, because the format is universal. It helps people to look at the information the way it has to be processed. The second is be aware of the expectations of the format. For example, in a written format, if you're using a message, you're using messaging, right? You cannot have very long messages. If you have to send, break it into 2 or 3 different messages. But if you send a long messages where people have to keep clicking and keep scrolling, they might lose out on what you are trying to say. So have an understanding of what goes with the format. If you try giving the history of your life on Twitter or Instagram, then obviously it's not going to work. So understand how you can just use keywords to prime attention to what you want to say. So note all these things. And finally, adapt as per company guidelines. Despite having formats, there are some companies which have particular ways of doing things. First, try to understand whether these are outdated or whether that is a way which is convenient for them. If it is convenient for them, well enough, adapt to it. If it is outdated, I won't again name the company, but one of the company where they had invited me for training in written communication. Most people who were attending kept telling me, no, we can't use this format that you're telling us because our company has been using a different format. Then I told them, I said, listen, they're not going to pay me in thousands, and that they're not going to waste your training time if they don't want you to change. Right? So sometimes people are doing things simply because they are not aware. And so find out. If they are not aware, make them aware. Don't use an outdated way of writing merely because your company is using it. But at the same time, if your company is using a particular format because it is more convenient for them, there is no harm in going ahead with it. So for some places, the surname works. For some places, the name works. For some places, Sir, Madam works. So you need to understand and adapt yourself to that. If you need to ask guidance. If you can figure it out for yourself by looking around, you can do it that way. So having spoken about all these areas, I will move to the etiquette of written communication. The first and foremost etiquette is avoid short forms. Please do not use random short forms. Use short forms in written communication which are available in the dictionary. LOL for my generation, I will be turning 50 this year in September. So for my generation, LOL has always meant lots of love. For the current generation, it means laugh out loud. For the generation after that, God knows what it will mean. But if you're using random short forms, somebody is reading it and doesn't know that short form for what it is worth, you may be misread. And don't create your own ones. TTYL, MMHR, whatever. So many happy returns of the day. So MMHR, OBD. I mean, what? The simple point is don't use short forms until and unless they're required. Using a short form like PTO is fair enough. Using short forms like HBD for happy birthday, if you're so busy, that person I'm sure can do without your wishes. But you cannot use short forms like that just because they are available. The second is don't randomly forward. I mentioned this earlier, I'm mentioning this now. Please be very, very careful, especially because now the government is, touch wood, our cyber security is not so tight, and neither, I mean, they can't do anything because of the sheer demography and quantity. But essentially, the government has issued a warning that if people are spreading false messages, especially in the context of COVID, the person is liable for persecution. Having said that, we are going trigger happy with this device and forwarding everything. Oh, before this one sends, I will send it. So, there is such a lot of rubbish. As I've said in the next point, University of WhatsApp. Why engage in it? Plus, why keep forwarding information? You have the information, keep it with you. You need to forward the information, send it along. Because if you send your boss or your colleague or your junior 25 different mails, 10 different messages, you are flooding them. And if you're flooding them, they're not going to give any seriousness to what you have written. So you need to understand this. The fourth is know your emoticons. This, we use it for namaste. Internationally, it is used for high five. So obviously, it depends on whom you're writing for. You may not know your emoticons. You think you're sending a smiley, or you think it is okay to send a heart to somebody. Somebody else might misinterpret it as a statement of love, and that person wouldn't be totally misplaced. So kindly watch out. Don't go trigger happy with emoticons, sending random emoticons to express what you feel. There are words available. Use them and minimize the emoticons. Do not hound people. I have people who send me a message, the next minute there will be a phone call. Breathe. Sending a message out, give that person space to react to that message, because there has to be two actions after receiving. One is going through and deciding a course of action, and then comes the counteractive or the part of the feedback. However, many a times when we are in written communication, we send out a mail, we are expecting a reply, as if it's going to hit there and bounce back at you. No, you need to understand. But at the same time, you can't send out a mail and sit there and say, oh, I've sent the mail. Must be, let me wait for the reply. No, you need to know if it is urgent, you need to follow it up with a phone call. If it is not urgent and the person hasn't reverted in a day, ask, have you received my email? There is no harm. But if you're just going to keep sitting on things, it's not going to work. So understand that thin line. The next is state your expectations. You need people to very, very clearly state, you need to tell them very, very clearly what you expect. In the final analysis, whether you are writing on Facebook, whether you're writing on anything, what is the expectation? So if I'm writing for you moods of Preeti, people are looking at those pictures as moods of Preeti. If you're talking about the world of music, people are going to say this is the way she immerses herself in music. Otherwise, people are saying, okay, then they are going to take this look as cranky. Whereas if I'm saying it's for music, they will call it attentive, right? The face hasn't changed. The words going with it have. Please be aware of that. State your expectations. You will drive vision. You will drive perception. Finally, know when to shift from oral to written communication. I gave you an example of it. Sometimes you have sent a written communication, you need to follow it up with oral. Many a times you realize that a person has spoken about too many things on the phone. It is better to put it down in writing. I have worked with people who forget what they have told you and then they say, "Arey, par ye kyun nahi diya tumne mujhe?" Because you wanted the other thing first. But when you have put that in writing, you can say, refer to my mail and see what we had agreed. Whereas if you have nothing in writing, it's your word against the boss, and we all know who is always right. Yeah. Finally, proofread. I will give you a really weird personal example, which my family still can't get over. I proofread almost everything I write. There was this one point, but I'm cool and calm with my family. I don't really always do that. Though out of habit, I do it very often. So once I was sending my family out a message, and I was writing my brother's name on it, one of my cousins, and it got auto corrected to something totally different. So I was typing out the words Bandya Dada, because with love we call him Bandya, but it had auto corrected to Banwa Fada, and I was in a hurry and I sent it off like that. That has been more than 15 years ago. But even today, everybody teases him, teases me, and teases anybody who can be teased by calling them Badwa Fada. So it has become a code word for typo errors or autocorrects, right, in our family. So we need to understand that despite our greatest intellect and our most brilliant speed and our highest focus, we are humans and we are likely to make mistakes. So when you proofread, you can catch those mistakes. And when you can catch those mistakes, you can rectify them. When it reaches the other person, there is no taking back. And once it has reached that and the error is misinterpreted, it can cause a lot of issues, right? If you forget to type a note, if you type a note where you don't wish to, okay, I may consider this, instead of that, in a hurry, you type, I may not consider this and send it off, then that is something totally different, right? So that is the etiquette you need to understand. I will quickly show you two examples, not get into the details of it, but these are two examples where you can see challenges in what people have drafted. Claims, right? If you look at what I have highlighted in gray, that will make you feel safe and happy in this uncertain time. Can you guarantee it? No, because for different people, different things may make them feel safe and happy. So while you can say this is one of the ways to make you feel safe and happy, if you say this will make you feel safe and happy, and then God forbid your client is in the US, he will sue you and win. Because McDonald's was sued for not writing contents hot on a coffee, and it spilled in a woman's lap and she keeping it between her feet and driving, and then her feet got burnt and she sued them and won. So you're giving the entire opportunity for people to sue you. How can you claim that this will make you happy? How can you, and if tomorrow somebody at the end calls up and says, it didn't make you happy, it didn't make me happy, can I drag you to the court? Then what? Right? So be careful about what you are writing. Okay. Again, in the second area where I have highlighted, you can see that the sentences are very, very long. Most people sense that they would enjoy more life if their energy levels were higher or their pain was less, but finding the pathway to health for them is not easy. People like higher energy levels, full stop. People feel low often, full stop. Good health is not easy to come by. Now, this is penetrating people's minds. If you're making a pitch and putting complex thoughts into it, it is not easy for people to process it. Learn that when you are pitching, when you are writing something, put it in simple terms. Break down the thought, because you can see it, because it's in your mind, which you're putting on paper or on your laptop or on your phone. But for that person, they can't read your mind. They're reading what is there. So it becomes difficult to read and understand and perceive. The second example I will give is your dear sir and madam, greetings from whoever. Now again, be careful. Know when to use a colloquial tone. If you are sending a formal written mail, it may not work. This is an interactive mail, so it is fine if you say greetings from so and so. But at the end, mark out what I have marked out in gray. It says, you have our permission to spread the word. It smacks of an ego. It makes people want to rebel. It makes people want to say, who are you to grant me permission? I'm not interested in spreading the word because I don't think you're so great anyway. So if you are giving the person an impression that you are an idiot, so here, let me hand it to you. Or I am the greatest, so let me give you the permission to appreciate my greatness. People may not really digest it very well. So be humble, be straightforward, be considerate. Think about whom you're writing to. Think about what you're writing for, and write in a manner where the first paragraph says it all and the final paragraph says it all. Says it all in the introduction about your needs and expectations and content, in the final paragraph about your actionables, because that is when you will be effective. To conclude, I would like to make just one point, that good writing is clear thinking made visible. So don't put your pen to paper or your fingers to your writing pad till you have thought. We start writing and then thinking, that is the biggest way to disaster. I have been trained to put my pen on paper and pick it up only after I finish saying what I have said. The moment you pause to think, somebody who is an effective reader will find those pauses, because there comes a break in thought. So thinking is an activity, it comes first. Writing is a consequence of that activity. If you try to do both simultaneously, you are primed for disaster. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for the patient listening. Thanks for being there. I hope this webinar has brought to you some tips, some points that you can apply. My mail ID and phone number are at the bottom of the screen. I would be very, very happy to touch base about any specific queries that you have about this, any specific thing that you have written and you want to know what could have been done to make it better. I would be only too happy to do that. Or if you have any suggestions for what I could do or touch on further, I would be happy to do that as well. So having said that, I will close the session here by exiting the PPT. However, we will take questions. So whoever has any questions, please feel free to raise them, and it would be my pleasure to answer them to the best of my ability.
Ma'am, I didn't have a question. I had an observation to share.
Right.
Many a times, especially when one is using WhatsApp and
Right.
one is waiting for some particular message, uh,
Right.
one gets a notification that the other person has read with the help of blue ticks. But sometimes
Right.
it so happens that the other person may not have actually read it, may have just opened the window, and there is something urgent. So yeah, so many a times it has happened in case of my friends, or even in my case, that when something is urgent, when you said that you need to know what medium you need to use, that particular time when it is something urgent, when that you're waiting for, you probably just need to call rather than you know um, waiting for the other person.
That, or you need to specifically draw that person's attention to that message by saying, I've posted have you tag it, have you seen this, or could you reply to this, or I want an answer for this. So if it's a friend, you can obviously say, I want an answer for this, or I need an answer for this. If it is a colleague, you would say, I hope you have seen this, could you let me know your views. So technically you need to tag and draw that person's attention, because if that person hasn't responded, it obviously means that that person is not seeing it, and person is online typing. My old suggestion is also, when you see a person typing, don't keep typing simultaneously, right? Because obviously it is not a competition of who types faster. Yeah, it is the point of getting your ideas, getting your thoughts, getting your feelings across clearly. And many a times you land up wasting your time and the other person's time, either saying the same thing or opposite things, and then you go back to the drawing table and start over. So either you need to request that person to stop, let me finish what I'm saying, then respond, or have patience, hold it. Neither is the phone running away, neither are you. Yeah, so hold it, let that person finish what that person is typing, and then turn around and start typing what you wish to. Because usually, as you rightly pointed out, when people get into this typing competition, that is when we tend to completely lose out on what the other person has been trying to say.
I believe Mushtaq has a question, ma'am.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am.
Hi, Mushtaq.
Hi. Good evening. Yeah. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I really like. I mean, the way you always contextualize it with relevant examples, I guess, makes your presentation all the more helpful for everyone who participates. Just quickly switching to the question that I wanted to ask you. In your um, in your closing, you said that it's very important to think through and visualize the message that you wish to convey to your reader, and then
Right.
start writing. And if you start writing without having done that, and if you stop in between um, to think through, that may affect your writing or the message. Can you please give in a little more context to how possibly that might affect your writing, with any suitable examples or a relevant context to that? Yeah,
Sure.
that's
Sure. Yeah. So, see, what happens is, let us say you are drafting out a letter to somebody, right? Now, that letter may have a particular argument that you're trying to make, get convincing that person to turn around and speak, to reconsider a matter that you have been discussing. So you begin your letter by saying that, it has been some time that we have been discussing this issue, and I think it is important to consider, and I would put my arguments forward in that light. And you start writing something, and then, God forbid, the bell rings, or you lose your train of thought, so you sit down there and you don't have an outline. So you sit down there and start thinking, oh, what was I going to say? There comes a pause. If you realize your language, your style, your mood, the way you write will change. So there will come a point where you will move from courteous to not so courteous, or you will move from assertive to not so assertive. So you have been saying all this time, I am unwilling to compromise on this. And as against that, you might suddenly move into the next paragraph saying that it would be important if you could consider. Now, here you have contradicted yourself, right? Because you have said earlier that I'm not willing to compromise. But the moment you have now said you would consider, because normally in polite language, you would say you would consider, and you are a polite person. So you have broken your thought, and you have for a moment lost focus, that you have committed to that person, that you are not willing to compromise on this issue. So you have gone back to your polite. Now you're giving that person signals that there is still a scope to maneuver. Right. Mushtaq, you had the fortune of working with Dr. Barucha. She was my PhD guide. She was a person who, even if you would repeat a word, including things like and or because, more than twice on a page, she would stop you and say, don't you have any vocabulary? Right. So possibly that was what has pushed me to reaching a point where I think first and I write. Because, you know, I have had teachers who have been able to pinpoint, okay, this is where you stop to think, here is a gap. This is where, and today as a teacher, I can do that. And we don't realize it, because the moment we stop to think, our mood changes, because a thought changes our mood. Okay, some of the people on this group do meditation with me. They would empathize with that idea that the moment a thought comes to your mind, your peace is disturbed. Right? Moment any thought comes, it may be even be a positive thought, but still your frame of mind as it has been till that moment is disturbed. And that disturbance is going to reflect in whatever you do. So you will reflect it in your writing. Your words will change, your style will change, the meaning obviously will change. Sometimes you will lose the context if you really get lost in that thought. Therefore, it is important to think things through. And once you start writing, you will retain, because see, there has to be a uniformity, if you want it that way, in mood, thought, and language. That will not happen if you keep taking those pauses in between. Yeah, so that is one of the things which happens. The other thing which happens when you pause to think, okay, you can pause, but when can you pause? You can pause if you're writing different points. So if you're writing a letter where you are saying, point 1, be proactive. Point 2, run a mile. So you can write point 1, be proactive, 2 paragraphs, finish it. Then you can pause, think, and then write run a mile, because they are diverse thoughts. But if you're writing the same thought and you pause, there will be automatically a break in thought. One of the compliments I've received on my PhD was that it was one of the better written PhDs. I'm not saying it as a manner of bragging. I'm just giving it by way of an example. And Minoti has been my shadow through a lot. And she was the one typing it out because I couldn't keep pace with my thoughts. Right? And she knows that when I sat to write, I wrote 90 pages at a time, and she would type those 90 pages at a time. Because the moment I thought, I mean, we wouldn't even get up to drink water. Anybody who wanted to drink water would also hold it in abeyance. Because the moment you thought it's, you know, you stop, you're gone. Your sentence will change. The next time you're writing, do it as a conscious exercise. Okay, we are in an online medium, but someday if we have the fortune of doing this face-to-face workshop, we will try it out. But today at some point, just try it out. Write a paragraph, and in between it, pause, and then continue writing the same paragraph. You will see that your mood, your tempo, your style, everything has changed in it. Yeah, does that answer your question, Mushtaq?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
Pooja has a question to ask, ma'am.
Yes, sure.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Pooja.
Firstly, thanks much for this amazing session. There have been so many case studies which have been cluttering across my mind as and when you were going through your session. This has actually happened during the course of the various roles that I've taken up in my corporate life. So it's been definitely kind of a flashback. My question is specific to this one point where where you mentioned about know the reader. So when a reader is known, we can understand through our various interactions that he's an absorbed reader or a skimmer. If he is an unknown reader, In that case, what would be your tips to place the communication across levels? That is a senior management, a manager, a peer, a subordinate. Is there something we need to keep in mind, and how would it be best placed?
Right. So my simple suggestion would be, if the content permits, believe that readers are skimmers. Okay. Why? I will also tell you why. Because people who are at the lower end of the ladder, they don't have the patience. People who are at the upper end of the ladder, they don't have the time. Right? So the consequence is the same, that they don't either have the patience, so they skim. Are itna kaun padega? That is the reaction of a lot of young people. And with a lot of senior persons, are ye pad sakta hu main, but time nahi hai. I have a meeting lined up, there is a call coming, I have to read this now in the next 5 seconds while the call is ringing, and I can wait to pick it up. Therefore, we need to presume, until and unless the content demands having a person who is an absorbed reader, it demands, in the sense you are sending a detailed proposal. Even on a detailed proposal, there would be an abstract, there would be an overview. For the simple reason, everybody has a snapshot mind these days. Let us not blame anybody. We have become very short in our attention and focus. Given that we are short in our attention and focus, it becomes a very big challenge if we are going to, be skimming, jumping, hopping. And therefore, if you have an absorbed reader, or you have content which requires an absorbed reader, give an overview and give the document. If you can create matter which can be skimmed over, so much the better, because most people are skimmers. To enable skimming, use headlines. Okay, use bold. I have sent out a mail today with some people who are present here know about. There, I have put my keywords in bold, because I know that my content, what I've written, is going to make the reader defensive. I know it. I can perceive the reader reading my thing. So when I know it's going to make him defensive or her defensive, I need to drive home my point. So at least I want that person to see and acknowledge those words which are key for that person for my point to be driven home. So in every point, I put 3 to 4 words in bold. They stare you in the face, you can't ignore them. So automatically that much will be retained. And if that person wants to understand why is that in bold, that person will automatically go down to reading and become an absorbed reader, right? So try out techniques, of headlines, try out techniques of bold, try out techniques of highlighting what you write, because those are the techniques which help you to draw attention of the skimmers to content.
Komal has posed a question in the chat box. She's asking us how to approach while pitching a sales through WhatsApp messages or any other social media. What are the words that one can use, especially to attract the young generation?
See, why becomes very, very important, right? So anything which will attract them to the why. Okay. So for example, if I am launching a beauty product, okay, which is going to help get rid of blemishes, if I just say blemishes hurt, then anybody who has blemishes is going to read that. I have primed them to read whatever else goes following it, right? So when you're pitching anything, use those keywords as either the headline or the beginning. Another thing which attracts people is something which is unique or different. So if there is something different, don't use cliches. So the moment you say break away from the traditional, that tells me कि ये कुछ नहीं होने वाला है भैया. This is a marketing strategy. ये packaging है. So I'm not going to process that information. Rather say, okay, we will offer that to you at 5 rupees less. Okay, that I'm willing to accept. But if you're going to tell me we are doing what nobody has done before, that doesn't become. So one, and the first and foremost is avoid cliches. The second is get to the why. That is the what can, if you hook the person onto the why, the person will ask you about the what, even if you don't tell them. So get people hooked to the why of your communication. Why should they buy something? Why should they use your product? Why should they? So, for example, okay, there was a time when people kept coming at me with free credit cards. I'm not a one for credit card. But that time you couldn't book airline tickets without credit cards. Had one intelligent person told me that I'll offer you a credit card to book online tickets, I would have happily taken it. My point is, understand your, why are you pitching, right? So if you have somebody you're pitching to, you need to know why that person will use your product, why that person needs it. And once you touch on that why, the what that person will ask you if you don't tell that person. So focus on the why. And use the lingo of the generation. Use, that is another thing. I mean, if you're calling, writing to somebody of my age and saying, what's up? With a WASSUP, I might say, yaar, isko likhne nahi aata. But, if you write to somebody from your generation, what is up with you? They will say, isko likhne nahi aata. Right? So you need to say, bhai, kiske liye likh rahe ho? So, you write. So when, I mean, a lot of people who have seen me playing with my grandkids say that you get down to their age. Because I really do. My clothes are as messy. The place around me is as, my hair is as scrawny. I'm jumping around with that same amount of enthusiasm, which the kids are. So they feel that I am them and they play with me, right? Whereas people who are closer to their age can't keep their attention. And then their parents many times ask me, how do they sit quietly with you for so long? That is because I'm not trying to be 50 with them. I'm trying to be 5. If they are 5, I have to be 5. I can't be 50 and reach out to them because they will never understand me. But at the same time, if I am talking to another 50-year-old and I start behaving like a 5-year-old, that person will walk away very rapidly, right? So reach everyone with their own lingo. Women, for example, like to be told something which will make their life comfortable. Yeah, this is there for every woman. If you get her attention to that, this will make your life comfortable. It might be as simple a thing as a good musical note. Fair enough, it will make your life comfortable. You have me, you have my attention. Then you turn around and pitch to me that you pay 500 rupees for it. I will say, okay, it's giving me joy. Fair enough. But now if you turn around and say every woman is overworked and one among the thing that gives them joy is music, I will say it's one among the thing, right? Why should I pay 500 for it? So I think we undermine ourselves. I can say I will get a ice cream in 5 rupees or 50 rupees. So you are provoking me to think, right, in a particular way. So catch people's thinking. Once you're into their head, then they have to throw you out. Your job is done. Yeah. So when you write, get into people's head. They should feel at the end that they wanted to buy the product. अरे अब तक तुम कहाँ थे ये product लेके? That is the kind you should make them feel like. I think some people really do a brilliant job with that. My father was in LIC, and he had some development officers and LIC agents who used to bring in crores of business, and whenever there was these development officers meet, and they, my father used to be called as a senior manager to felicitate them. That is what they used to tell people. Ki they are after us. They call us. Ki abhi agla policy kab de rahe ho? So, when a child is born, we don't have to go to them and say ki iske liye policy le. They call us ki, "Arey, mere ghar mein bachcha hai, tum policy nahi de rahe ho kya?" So that should be the need you create in people's mind. So as pitchers, please create that need so much so that that person feels it. Yeah.
You had also asked me to remind you to touch upon certain common mistakes that.
Yeah, I did not touch upon them because they are related to certain medium. So please avoid things which say dear or, for two reasons. One, first and foremost, it's grammatically wrong. Second thing is all means nobody. Because when I say, there was this story in my childhood of someone, everyone, and no one, right? So if you say someone do it, or dear all, I would like to draw your attention to who is this all that is supposed to act? Nobody will act on it, right? However, if you say, dear members of the communication team, automatically Minoti and I have our neck stuck at the noose, right? So technically, even if it is team members, even if it is colleagues, even if it is, dear attendees, fair enough. If I say dear all, it can be all from anywhere to anywhere. So who is accountable? So in that sense, the first thing I would like to warn people against is this use of all. Don't use all, because nobody becomes accountable. All is nobody. Yeah, the second and equally important thing is, please don't send out, because that is something which I keep getting again and again. Don't send out things without especially if they are emails. Please see that there is a message, there is a reason, and there is, if there are attachments, they are mentioned. Because this becomes very, very important. I have seen people, mails with only attachments, or even messages. I've seen messages, WhatsApp messages with only attachments and no clue. Webinar on communication. Arey bhai, theek hai, so what? Do register. That applies to me. Webinar, it's just information. Why would I process it? If I want people to enroll for it, I need to tell them, register here or whatever. So you need to understand that we can't only have attachments. There has to be a header, there has to be a body, and then there has to be an attachment. Similarly, if there are multiple attachments, whatever the medium, I have got PDFs on my phone, I have got Word docs on my phone, I've got Excel sheets on my phone. Please say 2 Excel sheets attached. I have had people who are exchanging, I have recently had this experience myself. The entire communication is closed, and then somebody is saying, "Arey, wo communication kahan hai?" So it is in sheet 2. Acha, usme sheet 2 tha. So obviously that person is just seeing Excel, तो सामने Excel दिखा, हो गया उसका काम. नीचे देख ही नहीं रहे कि there is one Excel 1, page 1, Excel page 2. So that whole round is done, and it has come back to the square where this person is now typing out please reopen the Excel. There are 2 pages in it. So when you are attaching, just say, find attached an Excel file with 2 pages. If you say, find attached an Excel file, I'm only going to see the Excel file. So please be very clear in these, because these are common errors. And in the recent past, this is something I have personally seen. Don't overcommit through writing. And don't be ambiguous, because people are so afraid that I'm committing to something. Call a spade a spade. If somebody, you can't do it, say it. Minoti and I send 1,000 messages a day telling people what we can't do, So if you need to tell somebody I can't do it, you need to tell somebody. You're going to try and, sugarcoat it, it's going to slap you back at the face. So turn around and be firm where you need to be firm. I'm sorry, I have a webinar till 5 and it may go on. So I will not be able to deliver this today. Baat khatam. एक तरीके से, I'm waiting, अरे बाप रे उधर फोन आया, इधर भागो. That's where your attention gets divested. So these are common errors in writing. Please avoid them. When you're attaching things, say how much is the attachment. That needs to be clearly stated. Don't send things which are only attachments. And please, finally, don't go to moving from one medium to another. It has to be in the upward to downward order. So for example, somebody senior to me is writing me an email. I can't start replying in the email in a messaging form, right? Without a salutation, without a body, and without a conclusion. But if I'm writing at the same level. So if I'm writing to, let us say, Minoti, we are colleagues. So I write, dear Minoti, could you do this for me? Or Minoti writes to me, dear ma'am, could you please ensure that you would send me the link for the presentation by 5 p.m. today? So I can just say, sure, will do. Because I am her colleague, I'm working at the same level as her. Or in her department, I'm her senior. So I can say it. But if suppose I'm writing to the chairman of our of KLBS, I can't, and he has written a mail to me saying, dear Preeti, could you kindly look into this matter? I want it by the evening. Sure, no. Dear sir, I will surely do it. I'm on it already. Best Preeti. You need to complete that communication. So don't use shortcuts. Okay, once he has communicated to me in that way, I can respond. But I can't initiate communication in that way. That is something, again, that I want people to remember. Because that can create a very poor impression about you.
There's one more question. How relevant is it to use thanks and regards or best regards in an email? And where do you use the comma?
One is that thanks is one sentiment, regards is another. Regards essentially talks about respect. Thanks is casual in tone, right? So we don't use them together. You can say thanks separately, regards Dr. Preeti Shirodkar. Technically, in emails, according to the latest writing convention, the best way to sign off is best, B-E-S-T. Because that is the convention that has come into being in 2000, I think 18, yeah, right. 2018 October. Since 2018 October, the convention in writing is signing off with best. However, in India, people still prefer regards, so it is fine to hang on to regards. I have moved on to best, and I use best for signing off all my mails. So usually one doesn't use thanks and regards together. One can, however, use them separately. Ideal would be to sign off with best. Having said that, that is called the signing off. Yeah, whether it is best, whether it is regards, whether it is warm regards, this signing off cannot be followed by a comma because that is against writing conventions. So you just say best, below it write your designation, your name, your designation, and your office name, your phone number if required, your tagline if the office permits you. So usually with your sign off, you don't write a comma because there is a reason for it. With a complimentary clause is where you say, hoping to hear from you at the earliest or thanking you. There is a comma, then it's best. I remain is replaced by that comma. So after the complimentary clause, there is always a comma, but there isn't a comma which comes after the sign off. Yeah.
As regards the chat box, there are only these questions, ma'am.
Great. Yeah, so unless people have any questions, people are also most welcome because in case the lockdown doesn't end anytime soon in the total sense, it is, we are opening up, we are getting into unlock, but if it doesn't open up completely anytime soon and there is any topic that you want covered from me, feel most free to write and we can do it at a convenient time to all of us. Otherwise, stay safe. If nobody has any questions, we will sign off at this juncture.
Preeti, thank you very much for including
It's
us.
been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
ma'am.
Pleasure.
It was
Bye.